Radio communications had been lost with the Tokuma. This was not really cause for concern at first, because the moon did not have any orbital communication satellites as of yet, so communications were bound to drop every now and then. But this was different. In the last few seconds of radio communication, signs of distress were detected. Immediately, a rover went out to investigate. The Tokuma was pretty far away from the lunar base, so getting to its exact last location would be a challenge for the little rover. The Alliance astronaut had honed in on what appeared to be the black box. The black box was damaged. It definitely looked like it had been in a wreck, but there was no signs of the rover anywhere around it. The theory was that this was not the location on where the Tokuma had actually disappeared. Wherever this black box came from, it was ejected from far away, landing in this area. And with the moon's gravity, that meant that the black box could have been flying for miles before it finally landed back on the lunar surface. The search area that they were going to be looking at would be huge. At first, the Alliance was going to launch one satellite at a time to the moon, but because of this recent event, time was critical. All 3 satellites would be launched in one go. They would not only provide communications for the lunar base, but they would also scan the surface of the moon, looking for any signs of the Tokuma. Many pictures were taken, but it was almost impossible to find out exactly what was the Tokuma and what was just a normal landscape. Finally, a smoking gun. It was an area that the Tokuma would be in, and on top of that, the area was littered with shining debris. It was apparent that the Tokuma had suffered a critical failure. But what was it? What happened? The area in question was too far away to investigate. They would have to wait until another long-range rover could be sent back up there. This would be the first time in history that a Qraan died on another world. But the time for sorrow had to wait. Questions needed to be answered. This event did not help the relations between the Kyou and the Alliance. Rumors were quickly spreading of sabotage. As diplomatic ties started to break down between the Kyou and the Alliance, sanctions would be placed on the Kyou and its allies. This did little to slow down the Kyou. Most of its economy was between its allies anyway. The Egyptian Union and its allies would push forward without hesitation. The Egyptian Union space station, known as the Celestial, had once again moved its orbit, but this time in a very peculiar manner. No one could really figure out what they were planning with this new, strange orbit. Launch after launch was detected. Whatever the Kyou and its allies were planning, it was big. The Kyou would announce its intentions to colonize Minmus. They would proclaim that their ancestors discovered Minmus in the skies above first. Indeed, their entire culture was centered around the moons, especially Minmus, and their leaders never shied away from letting the world know that Minmus was rightfully theirs. The Alliance would do everything in its power to let the Egyptian Union know that Minmus belonged to the entire world and not just them. But as diplomatic relations started to crumble, the Alliance found itself with no choice but to set up a blockade around Minmus. Even though the Alliance was currently short on resources, there was one ship that was built for such a mission. The AMS had originally designed the Qraan to be a warship. However, only half of the ship was ever launched into orbit. Before the AMS became allies with the URA, the ship had already been completed. The other half, the battle half, would be put into storage and marked for the junkyard. For this entire time, the Qraan was operating in space, only half completed. The AMS, in their most wildest dreams, never thought that they would ever see a fully operational Qraan. The Kyou, of course, had foreseen this, so to protect their new investment, they would launch their own insurance policy. The Khopesh, fast and maneuverable, and it even had its own escape pod system. Its missiles were designed to penetrate heavy armor. It was one of the most advanced warships ever built. As it stands, the Kyou and its allies would proceed with their colonization efforts. As for the Alliance, they would be forced to halt the Kyou's illegal expansion. Both sides standing up to one another, on the ground and in the stars above. One wrong move could spell total war.